Hello, my name's Niranjan, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast. Learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Today is episode number 25, where we will talk to Brendan, a transformational catalyst who utilizes a powerful sound-based form of DNA activation and healing to help his clients take their lives and health to new heights. Brendan's the author of a critically acclaimed The Grand Illusion, A Synthesis and Science of Spirituality, Book 1. Now immersed in completing the monumental and groundbreaking Book 2 of The Grand Illusion. In addition, he's the host of Truthiverse podcast and a radio show. Hello and welcome to Brendan. Thank you so much for being available to come on the show. So welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk to you.
I was very intrigued with everything that you have put out because you've been working in the field of awareness and consciousness and freedom and rights for a long time. And that sparked a bigger sense of curiosity for me to learn about where it truly stems from and where it really comes from. What were those aspects for you that it nudged you into this world?
It's a really good question. I mean, I've had a journey that started in the spiritual realm, and I always wondered as a teenager when I was as young as 15, I used to wonder what was it all about, what was life all about, what happened when you die, what's on the other side, and all this kind of stuff. And my kind of inquiries started in that realm, more in the metaphysical side of things. Because I just wanted to know what was ultimately real, what was ultimately true. And I sort of started realizing over time that I also just wanted to be free to kind of just live my life and do my thing and spend my time how I wanted to spend my time, and not have to be forced into one of the sort of prefabricated roles of society, and tick the boxes that we're supposed to supposedly tick. So yeah, I'm kind of one of those people who is really annoying to, I guess, governments or despots and tyrants, because I just want to be left alone. And I think there's a growing number of people who are like that, who just want to be adult enough to kind of just figure out how to live responsibly and be left alone and go about their lives peacefully, really. And that's all I really, really want. And when I see the bureaucracy and the governments and the global governance structure deliberately trying to undermine our ability to do that and to just be left alone, it bothers me, and I feel the need to say something.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's great that you were able to find out that aspect of yourself so early on, because for many, it's, I don't know, maybe a lifetime and a half before people can figure out the element of freedom and maybe an essence of sovereignty as well. Was there something else that triggered that, be it the way you was raised or what was happening in the world at that stage, at that point, that tipped you over that edge, so to speak?
Yeah, I don't really know what it was. I think it's just something maybe in my makeup, because my parents are were very, very much mainstream, like pretty conservative. Just there was nothing really that they did that sort of pushed me in a certain direction. I think one of the important things that they didn't do was try to force me into a sort of a religious outlook or any kind of dogma. So they weren't religious as such. Even though I ended up going to an Anglican high school, and I was indoctrinated in little primary school as a little kid in the scripture classes and the Christian sort of creed. So I had that kind of background and that a little bit of that conditioning there, but my parents weren't that way inclined so much, so they didn't really push me into a belief system, which I think was really maybe one of the most important things. Was I didn't really have to overcome a massive sort of attachment to some kind of a dogma, whatever it might have been. But yeah, other than that, I don't know what it is. I just have always been someone who has been obsessed by truth and what is the truth, and figuring out based on evidence and experience, and just attacking the challenge from as many different angles as possible to see what's possible as well. I want to explore what it means to be a human in the fullest sense, and see what we're capable of and see what I'm capable of. And that also connects into being free and spending my time how I want to spend it, so that I get to explore myself and the world the way I'd like to. So yeah, I don't know. It just seems to be an innate thing. I've always kind of wondered about some of the bigger questions, and it's kind of just snowballed from there.
Yeah. Do you feel, as you've moved through that process, delving into different areas, that you're able to answer some of those questions?
I don't know if anyone should say that they can answer them, but I used to think so. And I went as far as being able to experience some things. I've experienced infinite consciousness. I know some people will hear that and it won't really land. Some people will go, oh, I know what you mean. I know what you're talking about. Those kinds of peak experiences, altered states of consciousness. And, I've had those. So for me, especially with the level of study I've done over the years, if I was to say that I've arrived at an ultimate truth, it would have to be that we are infinite consciousness. We are everything that exists, and we're unlimited. Ultimately, we have no beginning, we have no end. We're not subject to time, and we're just the vastness of what we are is incomprehensible. So that's kind of where I ended up in the grand scheme of things, and everything else within that, or subordinate to that infinity, is kind of debatable. I'm not really overly attached to anything.
Right. Yeah. It's still pretty profound, though. Profound to be able to sit back and look at the unlimited possibilities that are available, the magnitude and the scope that is not even untapped. We haven't even touched it on the surface. So with everything that you've kind of come across and learned about consciousness, through the thousands of hours of study that you have done within your book, and even interviewing other people on your own podcast, what do you feel possibly defines you? Or is this something that defines you in that way of who you are today?
Well, I don't really think that I don't like boxes, and I don't like labels, and I never really have. So I think that it's just that search for ultimate meaning, search for ultimate truth, and for confirmation of it. And I'm always testing and questioning. So I think those things, a lot of people who know me kind of a little bit, but not that well, would see me as an activist kind of guy, a guy who's talking about conspiracies and power and all this kind of stuff, and that is a part of me, which is just that part of me that is the guy who wants to just be free and left alone. And those, I think, are that drive for freedom and autonomy and self-determination, as much as the truth seeker part of me. Those are the two things that are probably the core defining aspects, I would say.
Do you feel that is your calling? Because often there's language thrown out there like purpose and fulfillment and why we're here, and the bigger, grander scheme of things of why is the planet here? Why are humans on this planet? All these other things. Why is the acts of the current third dimensional world actually playing out the way it is? Even in all of that space, there's ultimately a reason, a calling, a quest, or a definition of some sort as to why we are here. Do you feel that's what your calling is, to be a truth seeker?
Yeah, well, it's hard for me to deny that because I don't seem to be able to turn it off. So, it seems to be the authentic expression of the personality of Brendan Murphy. And you know, a lot of people could relate to that. They feel like they're here for a reason, on a mission. You know, I've felt for many years I'm on some sort of mission, and for me, it's all about truth and freedom. And if people don't feel like they have a mission, that's totally fine. You know, just live, just figure out what lights you up, and go and explore yourself, and discover the vastness of what you are, and approach it from different angles, and give those attachments away, and explore. It's not necessarily a bad thing to not have a sense of a definite sense of purpose. You know, that keeps things very open, and you know, you can do a lot with that kind of open space.
Yeah, it's interesting though to have somebody navigate through life just day to day, and maybe, like you said, not really have a definite purpose or meaning, but yet you're fulfilled throughout your days. Is a very different, perhaps a foreign concept to me, but a different way of living, ultimately, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, we're in an age where all of the established kind of thought patterns and structures, and the things that we're supposed to do and be are all kind of breaking down, and dissolving, and it's sort of like the caterpillar dissolves itself in the cocoon, and
Right.
then goes through this sort of state of dissolution, and it ultimately is rebirth as something entirely different. And that there's nothing wrong with feeling like you're in the cocoon, dissolved and structureless. You know, I think a lot of people go through that, and we all are supposed to be challenged at different points in time, and go through these initiatory experiences that make us feel like we're being broken down, and bring us to our wits' end, and those are tests that are part of the human experience, and I don't think we should necessarily try to control them, or definitely not stop them. I mean, it is an amazing opportunity that we have to be able to live in so many different ways now. We didn't have the options that we have like 20 years ago, let alone 50 years ago or 100 years ago, to choose who we are and to author ourselves like we can. I mean, we can author ourselves to an extreme degree right now, to the point of absurdity as well. If you look at a lot of what goes on in the world, with people, you know, I identify as a unicorn now. This kind of thinking, you know, it's
Right. Yes.
But the point is, like, we've recognized on some level that we get to choose, and that we are creating ourselves as we go, and we're making it up as we go. I mean, you know, just because I feel like I have a mission or a sense of purpose, it doesn't mean I always know what the next step is. You know, like, I've lived basically on kind of faith for years now, you know, just trusting that the next step would unfold when it needed to, and that, you know, I'd have somewhere to live when I needed to, and, you know, we'd be able to eat next week somehow, and that kind of thing. So it's like, you know, you step outside of the sort of corporate structure of the world, which we're all sort of trained to operate in, and you know, a lot of interesting possibilities open up, but it is definitely challenging as well at the same time. So yeah, a lot of opportunities for growth in the world that we live in.
Yeah. It's endless. It's just based on the perspective that you look at life, right? It's based on the perspective of how you want to see life, and is the cup half full or is it half empty? It's how you want to look at it. Do you feel you've reached, or you are gaining more momentum with the intention of what you're here to do, of freedom and the truth? Not only for yourself, but for others.
Yeah, I would have to say there's clearly momentum building. There's a lot of people waking up at this point in time. This year has been, I think, thanks to COVID-19, it's been unprecedented as far as people getting red pilled and starting to realize, hey, there's something really off here. There's something really weird going on, and this doesn't make sense. So yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely, we are collectively, like, together, we are gathering a momentum at the moment that is really interesting to watch. And I'm noticing that people are choosing to want to be free. They're choosing to open themselves. They're choosing to question things and explore things that they normally wouldn't have. So, you know, that's quite gratifying for me, because that's, you know, what I've been trying to encourage people to do for years now. And, you know, that's just how I've lived for a long time. So It's great. It's definitely, there's a sort of a cultural shift occurring, which is being helped along by our governments
Yeah.
lying to us and making it really obvious that they're lying to us about everything. So people are realizing, hey, I have a chance here to think for myself maybe for the first time in my life, and I'm seeing it with people who are, in their 70s even, they're going,
Yes.
hang on a minute, this doesn't make sense. And then they start questioning, they start looking for information, they start listening to people they never would have listened to before, and looking at information they never would have before. So it's a great time to be in the sort of so-called truth movement, because we've never had this much activity or impact. I mean, the impact it seems to be exponentially increasing now. It's quite interesting.
It is. It's an exciting time. It's definitely an exciting time. How did that bear with you over the years of constantly on this quest and unraveling and unfolding so many different things for yourself based on your mission, your purpose, your intention for who you are? How did that bear well with your peers or your surroundings, your environment? What did that look like?
Well, it wasn't pretty for the most part. Yeah, I mean, the early days of that journey it was sort of like I would just keep my thoughts to myself for the most part. I mean, under normal circumstances, most people, particularly my peers, I mean, when I was 20 and 21, I was the only person I knew who was that age who was doing what I was doing, and everyone else was just doing the normal sort of 20, 21-year-old thing. So I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. I was completely devoted to this path. So I spent some time living in Melbourne for a few years, and then in Perth, in Western Australia, for a couple of years. And I was with my ex partner, and we were very kind of isolated socially, and we were kind of like hermits. And I'm kind of used to and quite comfortable living as a hermit, but at the same time, because I never prioritized like the normal things that most people do, I never went and got a full-time job. I never had like a normal kind of a work regime, because I just wanted to do this. I just wanted to study and learn and share what I was learning. So what that meant was that I've lived most of my adult life basically in kind of like what you would call first world poverty. I've never really had any money until a couple of years ago. So it was a journey where it was like, you're really tested, you really stripped back to the absolute basics and bare minimum. And I was fortunate to be able to put a roof over my head without having to pay rent for some time. So that was extremely helpful, and that allowed me to spend many hours writing my first book and the other books that are not published yet. So it was a time of kind of like the coal being compressed into diamond, kind of a very almost ascetic kind of existence. And so a lot of it hasn't been comfortable. I mean, I've been comfortable enough physically, like sheltered and protected and that kind of thing. But a lot of kind of stress and where's the next dollar coming from? How are we gonna put petrol in the car next week? And that was kind of like my normal existence for a long time, just because I chose to go down this road. And the dedication that I've had has been probably pathological, and a lot of people just wouldn't do it.
Did you question it at times when you was pushed to your last straw, or so strongly and so emotionally? Did it make you question, what the hell am I doing?
yeah, definitely. I've definitely had moments where I've just gone, what, how did I end up here, and what am I doing here, and is this really worth it, and how do I get out of this? And you have moments where it's just like you hit rock bottom, and there's sort of nowhere to go, and you wonder why would anyone do this? So yeah, it's been one of those things where there's a point where you're like, oh, there's no going back kind of thing as well. It's almost like you feel like you could probably relate to the feeling of life living you as opposed to you living your life. And it's like you're kind of a pawn in a great sort of cosmic game that you can't really control, and you're like this character that's been programmed into the game, and you got to play the role, and you almost don't have a choice. And I don't think I could stop doing this. I don't think I can turn it off. So yeah, you just kind of roll with the punches and take it on the chin and hope that improve your own situation while you continue to try to help humanity wake up and discover what it really is.
Yeah. Did you ever look at it from a perspective of what you may have experienced to be in a position of where you are today, maybe other lifetimes, or that you may have experienced that have triggered this and put you in the space of where you are?
Well, it's a pretty good question. I recently had some interesting astrological work done by a friend of mine who's quite a good astrologer, very experienced one. And according to what you were seeing in the chart, my other lifetimes or so-called past lives were heavily dominated by a kind of hermetic kind of way of living, a hermit-like kind of lifestyle. So this lifetime for me was Brendan's job is kind of to not be such a hermit, and he's sort of supposed to take all of the learnings and the wisdom and that esoteric study that was done in all these other lives and kind of bring it out into the light sort of thing. So if I had access to those other lives, which we all do in principle, I'd probably find that there's definitely strands of consistency that run through them, and being so obsessed with truth and what is ultimately true and the deepest, that exploration that tells you something. Right? When you see that in yourself, that you have this thing that you can't, that grips you and that has you in its grip, as opposed to you being in control of it. It's like, that's probably a clue as to the ultimate kind of makeup of your, what super soul or higher self or whatever people want to call it.
Yeah. It's pretty powerful when it taps in. Like you said, when it grips you or it just holds you in such reverence and the emotions are so heightened, it feels like there really is no going back. And this is it. This is the black and this is the white, and there is no gray in between. This is it. There's no questioning it. I find it really interesting how a lot of people who are seeking the truth, who are on a spiritual path to an awakening or looking for something more, where they came from and how they've got to where they have. Like you, it's almost like an innate knowing of what it is and how it transpires, and to trust it, learning to trust what it is. And it seems like you've been able to do that. You've been able to fall back on it and know that it's going to be there to catch you. Like you said, even when you was questioning whether there is going to be enough money to put gas in the car or not, there's a sense of comfort that something that's greater beyond the physical form has your back.
And at the same time, it's in my situation, my partner and I, we got to a point, I think 2.5 years ago, roughly, where we were absolutely at rock bottom. $200 left between us. That was our entire financial situation. And we were just like, we were house sitting. We ended up house sitting for 3 years nonstop to keep a roof over our heads. And so we're down to $200 and we're like, this is ridiculous. We can't continue to function like this. It's just not working, yada, yada, yada. Being these kind of like sort of almost masochistic kind of activist educators, in the alternative world, in the truth movement. And we had to pivot, like we had to make an adjustment. So it was sort of like, my point is, I think that you've got to recognize, as much as, you have faith in the ultimate purpose, if you like, or the ultimate maybe outcome, but you may still find you have to make some adjustments and take some unexpected actions, take some paths that may make you uncomfortable for the sake of your own growth and expansion. And we had to pivot to recognize that what we were actually doing was we were kind of a little bit stuck in the realm of martyrdom. We were that archetype of the martyr, and that was running a little bit too strongly in us, and we had to do something about it to actually start looking after ourselves, so that we didn't end up in a situation again where we were like, oh, here we are, $200, and we're house sitting because we don't have somewhere to live, like we couldn't pay rent or anything like that. Right. So that adjustment and like, it's like, have faith in the journey and the process, but at the same time you're going to have to take action to help yourself and expand yourself and grow when you need to as well, and to recognize the signs along the way. When the writing's on the wall, it's like, don't be in denial about it. And I probably was in denial about, because I didn't do any of this. I didn't start like Global Freedom Movement, our website. We didn't do that because we wanted to make money. It was about educating and waking people up and showing them what's really going on in the world. So yeah, you've got to find a balance in the end. And that's what we've sort of struck a bit of balance now. It's a lot healthier.
Good. It's good to know. Yeah, I guess for many, it can be pretty interesting and quite an emotional journey just in itself. I just try and figure out, where is that balance? Where is that element of comfort as well? What does that look like? Because when we look at it from another perspective of, we're in an environment that is here to help us also, depending on the perspective in which way you look at life. So there are resources out there also to support us, but to another perspective, some of those resources are feeding into that labeling power structural form in itself. So yeah, it's a tough one. I think it is a very challenging one for many who were on the path of finding their own truth and standing into their own power, and reclaiming who they truly are. I think it's a very courageous journey, and courageous for you to be able to do that for so many years. Well done.
Yeah, well, you do what you have to do. You do what you're called to do, and I couldn't have said no if I'd wanted to.
Yeah, such a strong component, which to me brings it loud and clear of karmic lifetimes that are shouting at you to trying to get your attention to process to the next level. You've written all these books, some published and some in the works, and you've got quite a following online with your podcasts. You've interviewed some pretty interesting people and gaining momentum as the world is changing and as souls are evolving, as systems are breaking down and people are finally waking up to their own truth. Where do you go from here? What's next?
Well, I mean, I think we all would do well to take a couple of different paths at the same time. I mean, the most important thing that we need to do is, as individuals, is to do our inner work and do our shadow work and go into those parts of ourselves where there's darkness or where there's woundedness, and to see that and be with that and work with that, because those parts of us that are broken or seem to be broken or wounded are actually, those are the sort of like latent power places where we will actually trigger the strongest evolutionary jumps and the strongest growth. Problems we have socially are there on a macro scale, because as individuals on the micro scale, we're not really taking responsibility and ownership of our personal makeup and our personal journey and our growth. So the imperative to consciously evolve ourselves, I think, has to be heeded, and we really need to listen to that. And at the same time, to be vigilant externally out on a big picture scale to see what's going on and playing out in the world, and the levels of manipulation and deception that are emanating from government structures and supra-governmental structures like the UN and the World Health Organization, and to sort of walk that line between being internally aware and working in that internal world, as well as being at least aware of the basics of what's going on around us and unfolding around us, so that we can, not fall into the traps that are set for us, and not allow ourselves to be manipulated and herded like sheep, which is exactly, how the system operates. I mean, so yeah, for me, there's been an enormous benefit to going in within and doing the expansive work and the healing work on myself over the years, and going into those nooks and crannies where it made me uncomfortable to look and to deal with that stuff. And that's really where the gold is. And so if people took that approach actively, and really took ownership of themselves instead of pointing fingers at people around them about, blaming people for, oh, you made me feel this way, you made me feel I'm offended, all that sort of stuff. Turn your attention within and figure out, well, why are you offended? Why are you triggered? It's not someone else's fault that you feel a certain way. That's your feeling. That's your response to the environment. It's a totally subjective thing. So work with it and learn something about yourself. That's kind of my mentality.
Yeah. From a global perspective, that's everybody's individual calling and process and their own evolution for their soul's growth in itself too, right? But what does that mean for you in what's next for you and your path and your sense of freedom and your sense of being a truth seeker? What's next for that? Is it going to evolve further, or are there going to be other power words that show up in the next short while as we continue, as the goalpost moves, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, I think that goalpost is always moving, and it's not going to stop. So, what I'd like to do is I'd really like to finish this second book that I was working on earlier in the year, and it's already massive. So I'd love to publish that and give that sort of gift of the end of the fear of death is really kind of what that second book is all about. And, proving that we are immortal, that there is that part of us that transcends space and time and survives. And, that is something that, there's a lot of material in that book, which I'm pretty excited to share. And on a slightly less personal kind of note, I mean, we've been working on this thing called the Global Freedom University, or what we call the Truthiversity. And I'd like to be able to launch that, or at least start sort of drip feeding that out a little bit next year as well. We've had people for the last sort of 3 years, almost 4 years now, actually, kind of waiting for us to do something with it. That's a big project. So the front end of it will be the Truth Network, our Facebook alternative for the truth community, where we don't censor people. So we respect and protect freedom of speech. And so that's kind of like if you like, almost a funnel into the Global Freedom University, which will be an educational platform. All the material that people sort of don't get taught at school, or the stuff that they should be taught and don't get taught, or, the stuff that's definitely kept out of the 6 o'clock news. And we'll cover all of that stuff in there. And really just help people to find their feet and get educated in very rapidly changing kind of psychoscape as it happens. Things are changing so quickly now, and people are looking for stability, and they're looking for accurate information because they're realizing that what they've been told is not right. So yeah, we're going to be looking to launch the Truthiversity as well next year, I think. And I'm pretty pumped about that. That's been a long time coming.
That's pretty exciting. Truthiversity. Give somebody some real education of how to tap into their own inner wisdom, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's going to be really a beautiful thing in the end, but it's the project. It's going to take time. So yeah, we'll see how we go.
Yeah, exciting stuff. Really exciting stuff. Brendan, I really appreciate you spending time with me and answering some questions and sharing all that you have gathered and garnered over the years, and giving us a very different perspective of what life could look like and what maybe life should look like. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Niranjan. Thank you. I've enjoyed chatting.
Thank you. I'm Niranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.